I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today I'm reading Chapter 17 of my book, How to Dismantle an Empire. This is called Too Small to Fail, and it continues with Section 5, Lands of Milk and Money. This looks at system change and what is the right size for sovereignty. In the years since I've written this, I've discovered many of the narratives that I had believed at the time have been psyops. And so I've revised a considerable amount of it and kept it closer to home because I don't know what is a global psyops and what's not anymore. So I thought that I would be more cautious and look at what we can control, which is our own labor, our own land, and our own time, and with that, get to our own truths. As always, I start with quotes. Promise them anything. Look them in the eye and lie. Spread joy and optimism. After the elections, you will keep some of the promises, especially the ones which suit you. That is Quintus' advice to his brother Cicero in 64 BCE. And this is Florence King. The more immoral we become in big ways, the more puritanical we become in little ways. And this is Tryon Edwards. Right actions in the future are the best apology for bad actions in the past. And last, Pearl Bailey. What the world really needs is more love and less paperwork. And I think these are the winds of change. I've noticed that all the fruit trees that a couple years ago I had made a video showing how they had been devastated, I think by weather weapons, have now come back with such a vengeance that they are breaking the boughs. So I think we should take that as a metaphor. Too small to fail. Under the existing system, banks, governments, and monetary systems that are too big to fail are propped up and allowed to tower at ever more precarious heights, guaranteeing that when they do topple, no one below will be spared. They are not really too big to fail. They're too big to be allowed to fail, no matter what the cost is in failures for the rest of society. Unemployment, home foreclosures, student debt, medical bills, or capsized savings. What we want is a system that can't fail and crash the whole economy. It needs to have firewalls built in so one failure doesn't spread to another, and redundancy so that other systems can take up the slack when one goes down. The opportunity to fail small is important, giving the possibility to learn from mistakes and recover. A network of communities, each with the ability to issue its own credit, is more resilient than a centralized structure and can survive the crash and burn of many of its individual elements. In fact, a limited and recoverable collapse may immunize others from a similar fate, and models that are working can spread to more places. In the end, only a human-sized economy is too small to fail. What do you picture when you say the word community? For many, a small town is as likely to conjure feelings of claustrophobia rather than neighborly bliss, while rural life seems full of provincial rubes. Apartments, on the other hand, often provide loneliness in close proximity. But suburbia can feel like a ghost town when two incomes are required to pay the mortgage. The idea of easy, unrushed community, where neighbors stop by for tea and a leisurely chat, evokes another country, another era, or a wholly fictitious place. What's the best size for a community? Should communities govern their own land, resources, infrastructure, education, healthcare, retirement, laws, taxes, and money? Today, local governments find themselves in a position of having the responsibility without the control. City councils often get the brunt of criticism and displeasure with public policy, even though there's little they can do to change it. But those who set policy are unreachable, insulated within layers upon layers of bureaucracy. What is the best size for self-determination and the ability to control areas vital to self-reliance? That's what this chapter will explore. The right size for sovereignty. In the secessionist option, Ian Baldwin writes that when the Declaration of Independence was written almost 250 years ago, there were over 18,000 sovereign political entities. In a global population of 800 million, they would have averaged 45,000 people each. In the newly forming United States, each of the founding 13 colonies averaged around 200,000 people. Today, we have 8.2 billion people, divided into fewer than 200 countries, as recognized by the UN, or an average of 41 million people per nation. And as Baldwin points out, fewer than a dozen countries control the lives of all the rest. If these 8.2 billion people were divided into small countries of around 200,000, there would be 41,000 sovereign states in the world, instead of 41 million people per sovereign state. The untied states, as secessionists call it, would subdivide into around 1,500 countries, with an average of 30 republics per former state. The federal government would return to being lowercase federal, the negotiating body between a confederacy of sovereign entities. California alone, if left in its present form, would have 200 nation-states for its nearly 40 million residents. Or the northernmost counties, with a total of 8 million people, could form the long-awaited state of Jefferson, still leaving a large enough population to divide into 5 more U.S. states of average size. To visualize the demographics of the remaining 32 million people, if these 5 formerly California states were ethnically divided, Euro-Americans would make up only 2, Latin Americans would make up another 2, and Native Americans, African Americans, and Asian Americans would share the last state. Another way to picture a representative California neighborhood is having 6 white households, 6 Latino, 1 First Nation, 1 Black, and 1 Asian. To take it further, if the United States were divided into groups of 50,000, as the world was when the country began, there would be over 6,800 sovereign communities, each about half the size of an average county. Today, there are 3,000 counties in the U.S. with an average size of 1,000 square miles and an approximate average population of 100,000 each. Building blocks of community. A difficulty in talking about the right size for sovereignty is that one person's country may be another's county. The words nation, state, province, county, city, and town have no standard range for the populations they denote. A country may range from tens of thousands of people, like Greenland or Seychelles, or over 1 billion people, like China or India. Of counties, Texas has 254, while California has 58. Some states have county populations averaging 12,000 people in the Dakotas, to 650,000 per average county in California, skewed by the nearly 10 million people in Los Angeles County. 10 million people seems a daunting number for whom to take responsibility, or for whom to just provide water. The land of lost angels might be better divided into boroughs or commonwealths, radiating out from the center like an urban pie with a desert crust. Likewise, we have no words that indicate a community size of a certain population. This muddies the semantic waters when talking about the rights that a group of people should have. For instance, the country of Iceland, at 320,000 people, is able to create their own banks, generate their own currency, pass their own laws, establish their own trade policies, and crowdsource a whole new constitution. Iceland's modest size and relative isolation may explain why they've had more success in reclaiming their economy than their European counterparts. On the other hand, the county of Monterey, California, with 430,000 people, can do none of the above. Neither can they ban GMO crops, aerial spraying of pesticides, or even fluoride in their water without facing the possibility of state sanctions. Words like country, state, county, and city are meaningless because they reflect a political history rather than population size. In a prior era, people there fought and either won or lost the right to possess their own resources, issue their own currency, write their own tax laws, enter into their own trade agreements, and choose their own wars. In order to discuss group rights, we need generic names for groups of different sizes. The family or household is the fundamental building block of community, with households organized into neighborhoods. In the U.S., an average household equals 2.5 people. An average block is a dozen households, and a neighborhood would range in the hundreds of people. The yet-to-be-named communities where we could start discussing rights might start in the thousands of people. Let's try out some terms for sizes of populations in the republic in which we stand. A household equals 2.5 people in the U.S. A block is a dozen households or around 30 people. A neighborhood is a dozen blocks at around 400 people. A hamlet equals a dozen neighborhoods, averaging 5,000 people. This is the heart of the economy and exercises sovereignty over its property, infrastructure, and collective mortgages. A village equals a hamlet and the contiguous hamlets surrounding it for about 40,000 people. A commonwealth equals the village unique to the hamlet and all the villages contiguous to it, making around 300,000 people. Under the principle of federalism, decisions should be pushed to the lowest level possible, which would be the hamlet and hamlets surrounding it or village. This is a size where people can know each other and ideas can be discussed. It's a workable unit for seeing the immediate impact of programs, a place to grow policies from the grassroots up. Whatever can be decided at this level should be. Sustainability is environmentally harder within a smaller food shed and ecosystem, yet economically easier. Large groups enable a lack of accountability and a temptation to externalize the cost. Networks are a way to spread successful ideas and coordinate actions and mutual support. Tens of thousands of people have been the makings of a small republic for most of the world's history. The vast majority of decisions that impact people on a day-to-day basis could be made at this level. Community councils are the heart of Republican politics in the original meaning of the word, where the impact of policy decisions is apparent, and a self-contained trade budget that shows what's coming in and what's going out helps to make clear the decision points and consequences. The Commonwealth of Nations. North Dakota, with 700,000 people, has proven that the Commonwealth is a good size for a public bank and a robust, self-reliant economy. California could support 100 Commonwealths, with small counties combining for diversity and resilience and large cities splitting apart like amoebas. Currently, California public schools are borrowing at a 300 to 1,000% repayment cost. If commonwealths could manage their own internal exchanges, they could avoid the majority of these costs for services. The state of Hawaii could be 3 commonwealths with its million permanent residents. The overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani was plotted by Hawaiian plantation owners to get around the import tariff in 1893. Without presidential approval, U.S. Marines attacked Honolulu and deposed the Queen. But 130 years later, the Liliuokalani Commonwealth could rise again. The other non-contiguous state, Alaska, is a prime candidate to go rogue at 730,000 people. Of their 213 native villages of the indigenous Yupik Eskimos, 184 were subjected to flooding and erosion in 2008. Now Alaska is building an 800-mile pipeline to export liquefied natural gas to Japan. The Yupik have set up wind turbines in their new villages. Self-reliance or part of the climate psyops? The Inuit Commonwealths could figure that out for themselves. An eco-state of mind. The next level of organization is the eco-state, composed of around 2.5 million people in a common ecosystem and food shed. The name of the eco-state indicates its function to share, protect, and proliferate the natural resources of the region. Spanning different bioregions, these could make up watersheds, educational networks, mineral repositories, and energy exchanges. A state like Vermont, with 625,000 people, could join with its neighbors to form the eco-state of New England, or the new Iroquois eco-state, if they wanted to honor a different heritage. Each of the commonwealths might have a coalition dedicated to fostering each form of community wealth, natural, physical, and human. Forestry groups and river keepers could promote the use of nature within the eco-state, while alliances would nurture the resources that go over and under the ground: clean air, pristine water, mineral deposits, and underground fuels. Each eco-state would control its own roads, railroads, postal system, and communications network, yet they would work together from the grassroots up. The human capital could be grown organically, raising healthy children from healthy local soil. Federal fever. A true federation is the most resilient form of government because it can't be co-opted. It doesn't own the rights to resources that it can sell or give away. It can't incur debts that have to be repaid by the member states. No leader can commit to war on behalf of the entire alliance. No army can easily defeat it because there is no head to chop off. Every hamlet would have to be conquered and occupied separately. And each economy is an experiment from which the others can learn. Rather than the imperial incentive that bigger is better, the impetus is to divide into smaller sizes and add more voices to the conversation. If the U.S. divided into smaller federations, it could join its northern eco-states with Canada, or southern states could rejoin Mexico in an ecological alliance. As groups get larger, their roles become more limited. The function of the eco-state is to caretake the given wealth of natural resources, while the Commonwealth protects the derived wealth of health, education, and housing. A federation is too large for governance of the people and by the people. Decisions should happen between hundreds of thousands of people rather than hundreds of millions, as it is now. In a truly federal organization, no one has power over others, but the agreements they come to are binding for membership in the group. If membership isn't desirable enough to warrant the changes, a group can leave, take their ball and go home, meaning keep their land and assets and join with a more like-minded alliance. Sibling commonwealths. The neighborhood, the hamlet, the village, the commonwealth, and the eco-state make sense to be contiguous within their own boundaries. They share common resources and could pool their strengths to offer their residents more opportunities. Federations, however, are a blend of geography and ideology and have no need to be contiguous. The work of forging global partnerships and making progress on common issues could be done in a decentralized way by federations and voluntary organizations within them. This would enable communities to supply the foreign imports they needed from sibling commonwealths and to export and import with a relationship. In addition, a far-flung alliance could be a source of mutual aid and support. Environmental disasters usually affect regions at different times and in different ways. We have sister cities and fraternal organizations to create bridges of goodwill across oceans and continents, in the same way trade could create fond feelings between those linked by appreciative commerce. It's commonly thought that developed nations have the resources to help in an international crisis, but in reality, they provide the money that organizes other people's labor, which could be free. Cuba has the best trained crisis response teams on Earth, with the ability to make do in a pinch. They offered assistance after Hurricane Katrina, although it was refused. They send doctors, midwives, and medics throughout the world. Cuba shows there's untapped generosity in every profession and every country, only waiting for the political will to enable it. Without a monopoly on currency, there isn't a cost to giving. As long as there's energy to assist someone in need, it only requires the local currency to provide a conduit. Like all forms of energy, goodwill flows both ways. In the nomenclature of federations, no one has more clout by virtue of their country's size or power. There might be 100 to 200 federations spanning the globe, no more than the number of countries now, and every person would be connected to the rest of the world by a mere 6 degrees of separation. They could compare their own village to any other in the world, joined in a like commonwealth within an eco-state of equal magnitude, tucked within a parallel federation, linked to a worldwide alliance of federations, and no one would have power over anyone else because of it. This chapter ends with a section called Brutus Speaks, which is the so-called anti-Federalist New York Judge Robert Yates, who wrote under the pseudonym Brutus about the danger of the large republic back when the Constitution was being floated as an idea. He wrote, "Remember, when the people once part with power, they can seldom or never resume it again, but by force. Many instances can be produced in which the people have voluntarily increased the power of their rulers, but few, if any, in which rulers have willingly abridged their authority. There is sufficient reason to induce you to be careful in the first instance how you deposit the powers of government. It is proper here to remark that the ability to lay and collect taxes is the most important of any power that can be granted. It connects with it almost all other powers, or at least will, in process of time, draw all other after it. It is the great mean of protection, security, and defense in a good government, and the great engine of oppression and tyranny in a bad one. No state can emit paper money, lay any duties or impost on imports or exports but by consent of the Congress, and then the net produce shall be for the benefit of the United States. The only mean therefore left for any state to support its government and discharge its debts is by direct taxation. And the United States have also power to lay and collect taxes in any way they please. Everyone who has thought on the subject must be convinced that but small sums of money can be collected in any country by direct tax when the federal government begins to exercise the right of taxation in all its parts. The legislatures of the several states will find it impossible to raise monies to support their governments. Without money, they cannot be supported, and they must dwindle away, and, as before observed, their powers absorbed in that of the general government. History furnishes no example of a free republic, anything like the extent of the United States. The Grecian republics were of small extent, so also was that of the Romans. Both of these, it is true, in process of time, extended their conquest over large territories of country, and the consequence was that their governments were changed from that of free governments to those of the most tyrannical that ever existed in the world. Not only the opinion of the greatest men and the experience of mankind are against the idea of an extensive republic, but a variety of reasons may be drawn from the reason and nature of things against it. In every government, the will of the sovereign is the law. In despotic governments, the supreme authority being lodged in one, his will is law, and can be as easily expressed to a large, extensive territory as to a small one. In a pure democracy, the people are the sovereign, and their will is declared by themselves. For this purpose, they must all come together to deliberate and decide. This kind of government cannot be exercised, therefore, over a country of any considerable extent. It must be confined to a single city, or at least limited to such bounds as that the people can conveniently assemble, be able to debate, understand the subject submitted to them, and declare their opinion concerning it. The territory of the United States is of vast extent. It now contains nearly 3 millions of souls, and is capable of containing much more than 10 times that number. Is it practicable for a country so large and so numerous as they will soon become to elect a representation that will speak their sentiments, without their becoming so numerous as to be incapable of transacting public business? It certainly is not. As in every chapter, I end with a lexicon of the terms that I've used and how I define them, and also some questions for reflection or discussion. And then I define what the paradigm shift has been in this chapter. It is: no government can be by, for, and of hundreds of millions of people. While it might control them, it won't be for them. Historically, around the world and in the pre-United States, hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands of people were considered sufficient to be their own sovereign republics. Bigger is better for empire, but smaller supports sovereignty. And for more, I'm going to suggest Winning Hearts, Changing Minds, which is on the book Switch, or How to Change Things When Change is Hard. And then also, what is the Greater Reset? Looking at a libertarian philosophy called agorism and asking the question of whether you can change things by dropping out or only really drop out by changing things. Thanks for watching.